The first step that we have to take is define the purpose. Defining the purpose of the analysis. So the question that lies here is, are you trying to find out the intrinsic value of the company? Or are you trying to do a credit rating of the debt that the company has? Are you trying to value a merger and acquisition that is expected? Are you trying to relatively understand what is the position of a company compared to some other company or the industry? So relative valuation or relative evaluation. So the purpose or the context of the analysis has to be set first. The second step is to collect data. Obviously, the purpose and the context will define or influence what kind of data you require. For example, if it's a manufacturing company or a IT company and you want to measure the intrinsic value, you might need data like the free cash flow statement. You might need data like the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet, right? And you might need to find out what is the cost of capital. This kind of information you will require. To measure the cost of capital, you might need data like cost of equity, cost of debt. Cost of debt you can find out by the interest that is being paid in the profit and loss statement. Cost of equity you can find out by calculating the risk-free rate, the beta, and the market premium, right? So these are all the different data that you need to collect when you are basically analyzing intrinsic value. For credit rating, again, for example, for credit rating, you will need certain other data like the interest coverage, like the capex. They will have more importance, right? Interest coverage, capex, debt to equity ratio, the upcoming expenses, expansion plan. All these data are relevant in both the cases, but in some cases, some of the data take precedence. In some cases, some of the data take a backseat. We need expansion plan, capex, debt to equity ratio, and interest coverage first when doing a credit rating. In case of intrinsic value, we need to find out the free cash flows. For that, obviously, we need the capex data, but the interest coverage and all these things, we just take a look that whether they are okay or not. We may not go straight away into the depths of it, that what the interest coverage will be in the future. That projection may take a backseat for a while when you are using intrinsic value. Now the third is process data. So you have taken a lot of input data. Now you have to process the data. What is the example of processing the data? Just the one we took here. Let's say to measure the cost of capital, we need to first measure the cost of equity and the cost of debt. This we find out from, let's say, the interest payments and the net debt that the company has. We find out the cost of debt. The equity, for the cost of equity, let's say we use the CFA method and we find it out, and then we do a weighted average of it to find the cost of capital. Weighted average, how do we find? We use the debt to equity ratio for that, right? So this is one way of processing the data. Number 4, analyze and interpret the data. Let's say we have measured the cost of capital of a company. It is coming to 15%. And the company has a return on capital employed of 30%. So we can say the company is earning well above the cost of capital. This is a good sign, right? In a scenario 2, let's say the cost of capital is 18% and the return on capital is 10%. This company is not in that much of a good scenario. So by finding out the return on capital and by measuring the cost of capital, we can actually find out whether the company's performance is qualitatively good or bad. We are actually using numbers to make some qualitative judgment about the company here. So this is analysis and interpretation of the data. After we have taken all these steps, that is, we have defined the purpose, we have collected the data, we have processed the collected data, we have analyzed and interpreted the data, what we do is we communicate recommendations. Communicate recommendations. Recommendations means what, guys? It means whether to invest or not, whether to liquidate or not, like that. So buy, sell, hold. This is one way of recommendations, you can say. After we have made the recommendation, which is backed by analysis and data, we have communicated it well, why we make a certain amount of recommendation. The sixth point is follow-up. A company which is in a good state today may turn bad. Something may come up suddenly. The markets may change. Some problem with the management may happen. Some process may go haywire, like this. Again, a company which is performing bad may turn around and start doing well. Both these things have happened and can happen in the future also. So we have to follow up regularly. Follow up regularly, and if required, make changes as when required. And this is repetitively, if you follow this cycle, we are following a proper financial analysis technique. This is a proper flow of financial analysis technique which is repeatable, and if followed, this can give us the desired results.